The following presentation was recorded live in Cincinnati, Ohio for CALLERLAB's 25th Annual Convention. This is tape 23, Teaching How People Learn.
Good afternoon and welcome. It's nice to have such a good audience. It's a big crowd. The session that we are doing, and first of all I would like to introduce myself. I'm Jerry Junck. I'll be the moderator for this panel. And to my right is Mike Jacobs from Herndon, Virginia. If you would, give him a nice hand. The subject that we are teaching, or that we are going to discuss, is teaching how people learn. How people learn. And I'll be real upfront with you. To me, teaching is the most important thing we do. It is also probably the thing that I personally enjoy the most. I'm going to turn this over to Mike because he has a start for us.
Thank you, Jerry. Okay, let's get started. Placissusumenia. Placissusumenia. Oh, well, let me try it differently, okay? Placissusumenia. No, it means listen to me in Russian. If I spoke to you in Russian, but you didn't know the Russian language, you wouldn't understand me. If I notice your bewildered expression, which I did notice, I might slow down and repeat the Russian phrase more clearly and in a louder tone. But despite my efforts, no matter how many times I spoke the phrase, no matter how many times I well articulated it, or how loudly I spoke it, as long as I continue to speak Russian, the chances are pretty remote that you will understand what I'm saying. Learning styles are so diverse, we may as well be trying to communicate in two languages. And if you don't learn the other language, it takes considerable time to communicate. Basically, understanding learning styles needs to go back to the golden rule. Do unto others they wish you do they do unto you. It is a matter of learning what the learning styles are and how important that is to communicating, to effectively teaching, is then getting your point across in the course of teaching. There are three basic learning styles. They are auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, tactile. Each person tends to use two of the learning styles that I just mentioned in combination with each other. One is a primary one, the other one is a secondary one that modifies it, and usually, very rarely, somebody uses all three, but usually the third one is not utilized at all, which means we have 6 groupings of learning styles. We have somebody that is primarily auditory in their learning style, that has a secondary, if you want to look at like the majors in college, a secondary major in visual or tactile, and so forth, and divides that way. Now, what do I mean by auditory, visual, and tactile? That doesn't mean how you act. That doesn't mean how you are as a person. It means how you get information in and how you function with it. An auditory learner learns by listening to verbal instructions. They remember by forming the sounds of words. The way to check yourself off as an auditory learner is, I need to hear myself say it in order to remember it. I often need to talk through a problem aloud in order to solve it. I memorize best by repeating the information aloud or to myself over and over. I remember best when the information fits into a rhythmic or musical pattern. I would rather listen to the recording of a book rather than sit and read it. Those are indicators that you're an auditory learner. It doesn't mean that you're a great speaker. It doesn't mean that you're musically oriented or anything else. It means you absorb information this way. There are physical ways that an auditory learner gives themselves away. The way they talk. I hear what you're saying. The way they act when they access information. Ask an auditory learner a question, and if they're accessing stored information, they look down in order to find the answer. The act of looking down shuts off any other action coming in so they can access that self as they talk to themselves. An auditory learner analyzes stored information by looking like they're looking into a teleprompter. The people that look you in the eye, they're not lying to you. They're finding ways of analyzing the information to give you an answer. So an auditory learner presents themselves in that style. A visual learner gives clues like, if you want to analyze yourself as a visual learner, I need to see an illustration of what I'm being taught before I understand it. I'm drawn to flashy, colorful, visually stimulating objects. I almost always prefer books that includes pictures or illustrations with the text. I look like I'm daydreaming when I'm trying to get a mental picture of what's being said. I usually remember better when I can actually see the person who's talking. A visual learner learns by seeing and watching. They use strong visual associations. A visual learner, when accessing information, looks upright. That's stuff that he has stored. When he wants to access information and analyze it and try to work with it, they look up left. But they always look away into different directions. It's a dead giveaway when they speak. I see what you're saying. Every aspect of their personality will tell you what the type of learner that they are. A tactile learner has a different approach to things. A tactile learner learns by becoming physically involved and actually doing something with what's being learned. A kinesthetic tactile learner, they have difficulty sitting for more than a few minutes at a time. I usually learn best by physically participating in a task. Am I giving hints here? I almost always have some part of my body in motion. I prefer to read books or hear stories that are full of action. They get involved with their environment. I'm a tactile learner. We have a myth in square dancing that you need to see spots or you need to be able to relate definitions. I don't work that way, folks. I become part of the environment as I dance. When I'm the point of a diamond, I'm pointing. I'm telling myself this. I'm getting physically involved in my environment. And so there's a place for every learning style in square dancing. Each one of those are modified by whatever secondary style that you have. My secondary style is visual. And so I see a lot of things. I relate a lot through reading. I'm very involved in being visual as a second style. I have horrendous hearing. I do not remember phone conversations unless I have actually written the notes down in the process. I can forget totally any conversation that I did not have an environment to remember it with. Now, for someone that is visually auditory oriented, it is extremely hard to understand where I'm coming from. I look like I don't care. I do care. I'm trying to find the language in common to talk with you with. It is unbelievable the barriers to communication that the lack of understanding of learning styles can cause, because it seems so evident that we all speak English. But just like at the very beginning when I spoke Russian to you, you had no idea what I was talking about, and you had some interesting reactions out there. It is that kind of effective barrier between you and your dancers and understanding what their problems are out on the square dance floor. No dancer is stupid. No dancer is unable to learn to dance. We as teachers are unable to get it through to them because we have not found the way of communicating to them. And it's terribly important to realize is that our need to access learning styles as a philosophy approach when teaching is going to be the most effective way of getting through to them. There's all kinds of aspects here that can get down to specifics. For instance, people that have been abused, by the methodology by which they were abused, lose that learning style. In other words, somebody verbally abused does not able to access information auditorially. They end up, if this happened to them young, they will take other learning styles as methods of learning, visual, tactile. It's learning then that when you relate to talking with them that they don't learn auditorily. I had a lady that was in square dance lessons with me. She was abused as a child verbally. I had to remember that my primary method of teaching, which was auditory over the microphone, was not going to be sufficient for her to learn. I gave her handouts ahead of time so that she could be able to go home and read and study them. And anytime there was a question from the floor, I had to stop myself from realizing this person's not stupid. When she told me after having gone through a half-hour explanation of teaching and working through, it's like, well, I don't understand this. What was this again? And whatever. I mean, I've never heard it before. That's true. She never did hear it before. It was never heard by her. So instead of reacting harshly, I had to realize she's been abused. So in a calm voice, a non-threatening manner, I started to explain. Not sounding like I was talking down to her, but I had to realize this is the avenue by which she can understand, and I had to try to talk and teach her that way. She learned the call. So it's a matter of observing the situation and start to analyze how I can handle the person's problems. I had dancers last week that in the course of lessons told me, oh, I confuse this call and this call. I'm looking at them going, well, this one starts from tidal waves, this starts from two-phase lines. They have nothing in common. No rule part is the same. They don't end in the same place. What are they confused? Names aren't similar. What's the problem? I thought. I remember watching them dance. They're tactile learners, both of them. So they dance by feel. What I found that in the course of looking at both calls had motions that were very similar to that moving up action around the outside that Relay the Deucey has. They weren't the same place, the same part, had nothing to do with each other, other than both had these large arcing actions around the outside, and that's why they confused them. So they weren't stupid. They processed information differently, and I had to find them a way that they could separate the two in their minds so they could function out on the floor. It means that you have to work really hard at solutions because there is no one answer. I know every one of you out there, as experienced teachers, have come up with an effective way of teaching a particular call. I've got news for you. You've got one of the 6 effective ways of teaching that call, because there are 6 learning styles. Now, in the days of large lesson groups, you would have seen a more diverse lesson reaction out there of different learning styles. Since many times we have lesson groups that have 1 square, 2 square, you might get almost everybody of a particular learning style. Therefore, one person of a different learning style will look slow in comparison to the other ones out there. That person's not slow. They're different. And that's the key to the attitude adjustment you need to make. This is not a slow person. This is a person that speaks a different language, and you have to find that language to communicate with that person. So what you're seeing out on the floor now is the need to learn how they learn so you can effectively teach to that learning style. The interesting thing is that the choreographic management team, formation team, came up with every call having 6 combinations available. So it's interesting that the number 6 appears there. The number 6 appears here. There are 6 learning styles. Therefore, there are 6 different teachers needed on every call to make sure you have covered every learning style. Now, folks, successful learners, no matter what learning style they have, you will not be able to analyze their learning style unless you know all the real physical clues to look for. It doesn't matter. They know how to learn. It is the unsuccessful learner or the borderline learner that you have to help. It goes back to triage. You know, triage is the medical term they used on the TV MASH series all the time, and it means that there's a group of people that don't need your help, there's a group of people that will survive if they get your help, and there's a group of people that, no, it doesn't matter how much help you give, they will not survive. Ultimately, you want to be able to be prepared to handle the people in the middle group. And to best handle them, you need to know their learning style and how to talk and to approach it with them. So finding effective ways of getting across means that you can effectively get through. Taking your favorite teacher on a particular call and using that, and it doesn't work on a particular individual, yelling it louder was just like me yelling the same Russian phrase louder again. It won't mean anything. Find a different approach that you may not understand. It doesn't matter if you don't understand it. If there was a Russian here, as badly as I pronounced it, he would have understood what I was saying, even though the rest of you didn't, because I found the language to speak to him in. So the real key is finding the different approach that is meaningful to that person. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to approve it. It just has to work. And that's the real key of effective use of learning styles. I have a handout up here which is for the guidelines to identifying and understanding individual learning styles, and I want to go over the 5 main points of it. You need to observe when you're identifying and understanding an individual learning style. You observe patterns of behavior. When you or your dancers experience success, what are the circumstances which brought about that success? Second, listen. Listen to the way a person communicates. If you only talk to others the way you want them to talk to you, you may discover you're speaking a language that is foreign to them, just like my Russian phrase. Listening carefully can teach you how to need to talk to them. Experiment. Experiment with what works and what doesn't. Keep an open mind and remember that even if an approach to learning does not make sense to you, it may work for your dancers. We do not all learn the same way. Focus on natural strengths, not weaknesses. Unfortunately, it's so much easier to pinpoint areas of weakness that need improvement than to bolster sources of strength. But you cannot build much on weaknesses. Strengths provide a much better foundation. A tactile learner that feels their way through a particular call may not fit our picture of the person that can repeat the definition back or spy the spot on the floor, but we need to build on their strengths rather than telling them that they're poor excuses for dancers. Learn. Learn more about learning styles in general. Pay close attention to your dancers and your own learning styles in particular. We can recognize and identify patterns of behavior and communication that would become keys for understanding and appreciating style differences. I want to give you one story in closing, which was told me by a learning consultant. The origins of this approach to knocking chairs off the table, to learning styles and teaching in general, came from 2 people actually working simultaneously on the same issue. One was a linguist, and the other was a psychologist. What they agreed to do was to work on their people in common, and they would work separately, then bring groups together to work on, and so forth. So one day, one of their subjects they were going to work with, the linguist and the psychologist were together. And so the psychologist would ask a question of the man in front of him for some information. And the guy would go, which we all know is a visual learner accessing information. And so he looked upright and for a long time and then answered the question perfectly. The psychologist asked another question. The guy looked upright and came back down again. And after 3 or 4 of these, the psychologist, who was a rather impatient person, said, "What the heck are you doing?" And his answer was, "Well, looking for the answer, doesn't everybody?" The linguist said, "Yeah, that's right." The psychologist said, "I don't know what you 2 are talking about. You're crazy." It points to the inability of one style to understand another style innately. It also begs the whole question. Doesn't everybody? No is the answer, and that's why you need to adapt. Here's Jerry.
Give Mike a nice hand. This panel I've been looking forward to. Mike and I did essentially the same thing at the mini lab in Portland, Maine in September, and really enjoyed it. Teaching is absolutely the single most important thing we do as callers. The most important thing we do, because it is the one thing we do that perpetuates the activity. I also think it is probably the least understood of the requirements of a caller. Not because we're bad or we don't want to be, because we're not trained as teachers in general. There are very few of us that do. And I think you also learn to teach through experience. I think that's the best way you learn. Teaching, and Mike covered all the aspects of it, and until I worked with him at the last session we did, or the thing we did in Portland, I had not thought of the 6 methods or 6 ways of learning. But as we go through this afternoon, you'll see that he will cut in and describe the various things that we're doing. Teaching is the greatest challenge because most callers are not trained as teachers. And the question is, what really is teaching? It's communication. It's communicating knowledge. It's transforming square dance language into English language that people who don't dance can understand. It's articulating the square dance language, articulating how to perform a call. It's instructing, training, educating, guiding. It's also the act of teaching dancers to discipline themselves to execute the calls. Think about that. To discipline themselves to execute the calls. Teaching takes three things in my estimation. It takes preparation, presentation, and follow-up. Those are the things that I think are essential. I also think, and before we ever start to teach, I think you have to have an understanding for what you're going to do. I think you have to have an empathy for the dancers that are coming in the door, for the new dancers. I don't think any of us who deal 24 hours a day or deal every evening with square dancing have any idea how difficult square dancing is to learn, how much we ask people to learn, and how little time they really have to do it. So I think you have to have a real empathy for people. Mike talked about the different ways of learning. I think you have to understand that everybody does, in fact, have a different way of learning. And you have to find that avenue, that pathway, to access their memory that they can remember and learn what we want them to do. There are some responsibilities to teaching. I think you have to set the hook for the activity. You have to make people want to come back. You do that through entertainment. I think you need to create happy, competent dancers. You do that through lack of frustration. And that involves a very, very serious part of teaching. And thirdly, you have to entertain. Requirements, you need to be prepared. You need to have a plan, a program. If you listen to Jerry Haig this morning, he talked about the teaching order. That how many times have you seen people want to teach a Ferris wheel, and they get all set up, and they go do-sa-do to a wave. I'll step back. They want to teach swing through. So they'll do-sa-do to a wave. And they teach the swing through. Okay, now they can't get out of it. So they have to teach boys run and Ferris wheel. Have you seen that? Has it happened to you? It happens all the time. So you have to have a plan. You can't just teach swing through and say, well, now we got to teach a boys run and then we got to teach a Ferris wheel. Then you haven't taught anything. You've just taught a montage of calls or a routine. And they really, instead of just learning swing through, they had to learn swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel. And what do you expect the retention rate to be on that? It's going to be minimal. And it's through lack of preparation that can occur. I think you also have to know your definitions. I'm a little lax when we do a session like this. I don't bring the definitions along and read them. At my classes, when I do classes, I read the definition. I don't trust that to my memory. Your memory is not that good. I read the definition to them. Then I'm going to speak to them in English how to execute that definition. That's the way I teach. I think you also have to understand easy, medium, and hard. Every call has an easy way to teach it, has a medium way to teach it, and a hard way to teach it. I don't think many of us are aware of that, and I think many of us teach the hard way first. I really do. Next, have empathy. Square dancing is difficult. Take a look at who are you teaching. Are you teaching retired people, young couples, kids? A very different aspect to the teaching process. Who are your customers? Be aware of that. Think about your music. It's a part of teaching. It's the part that they really came to hear. They came to dance, even though it's a class. People come to dance. So the main part of your program should have music. It should be music that makes them feel an energy. It should be music that they can maybe sing to, but something that makes them uplifting so that it doesn't feel like a class, it feels like a dance. People, and they said that this morning in this session also, the biggest thing you want to do is make them feel like a dance. Jack Murtha back there gave the analogy. For a long time he couldn't understand why people wanted to play football or play sports, because they practice and practice and practice. But he realized the only reason they would do the practice is to go to the game. They hoped they would get in the game. Square dancing isn't any different. People want to go to the dance. They will practice to get there. But why not make the practice as much fun and as entertaining as you can, and it feels like a dance?
Also remember that when I talked about learning styles, one of the primary groups needs that rhythmic background in order to learn. The auditory dancer, the auditory learner, needs the rhythmic background, the chant, the information brought forth that way in order to effectively learn in the first place. So by cutting your dancers off from music, you may think you may be removing a distraction, but you're leaving a third of your people behind because they don't have the rhythm and to connect to it.
Okay, and these are things that maybe you don't think are about learning and teaching people to learn, and yet they are. Learn their names. And I know a whole bunch of people say, I can't remember names. You need to learn their names, because people will want to come back if they feel welcome. If when they walked in the door you said, "Hi, Ed," believe you me, they want to come back. You took the time to know their name. It's the only thing people own that's totally their own, is their name. Take the time to know their name, or buy them big badges and read their name. But it's important. Make them feel welcome. Make it feel like a family. Make it feel like home. There's a tremendous fear factor to coming to square dance. Not because they didn't want to square dance, because it's the fear of the unknown. What is it really? So be aware of that. You have to exercise really good judgment. You have to understand that there are some evenings the moon is full or whatever. People aren't going to learn, or they've reached a saturation point. Be aware of that. I think we're far too concerned with getting through the class in a certain number of weeks rather than in graduating happy, competent dancers. For myself, I could care less how long the class runs. I care about, did they stay with me after the class is completed? That's your success point. Not that I completed so many calls in 10 weeks, or so many calls in 20 weeks, or so many calls in 30 weeks. The fact of a successful class is that when they completed class, were they still having a good time? And after they completed class, are they enjoying the activity? That's the benchmark that I think we need to use with our classes, rather than how many weeks did you take. Okay. Again, there's all kinds of reasons for people having a bad night. Back off. Forget it. Last thing, be on time and be happy. When they come in the hall, hi, glad to see you. You've already taken away some of that stress, some of that fear factor that people have. I talked to you about having a program. What do you teach first? And be effective, be efficient. Nothing wears on people more than to have to stand through long explanations of calls and long demonstrations of calls. There's only a certain amount of concentration time in everybody, and it's really quite limited. Be precise, be efficient with your teach. And Mike talked about the various ways of teaching. I like to get on the floor for a great number of things to actually demonstrate on the floor. Most people, I think, do get a lot out of a visual demonstration of a call. I think that's very important.
And you got to realize that what is he saying has to do with what I just said? It has everything to do, because the theory of learning styles has to meet the reality of where it's being presented. If the floor is sticky, it's a problem, people dancing and moving. If the lighting is bad, if it's too hot in the hall, if the caller has irritated the people out there by his having people up too long, how his demeanor is, what he's done to handle things and so forth, all of those make it a distraction from the learning situation occurring. Environment is where the learning situation meets reality, and to make the best environment is the way to handle the best teach, and that's what he's really describing here.
Exactly. Now, also, you hear lots of them talk about the all-position concept. I teach everything from always. I think that has to fit your personality. Doesn't fit mine. I teach things standard first. I want people dancing. As I said, I want them to learn the call, to walk through the call, understand the call, and I want them to dance it in the easiest possible way instantly, so that they are executing the call to music. As we move along and they become comfortable with that call, they become comfortable with how that call works, with the logistics of it, the kinesiology of it, I think would be a better word, then you can expand that call. But I don't think we need to be in a rush. We're just trying to rush people through and have them learn so much in such a short time. And I don't think it's necessary. As long as they're dancing, who cares what they dance?
And realize that only a third of the people that you're teaching have learned a concept in trying to approach things. If I'm the end of a wave facing out for a tactile person, that is a completely different position for the end of the wave facing in on the call swing through. How can that be? That is the reality of how they see things. For the auditory learner, it's the same word. What's the difference? For the visual, it's a matter of spot association, and that can make it a different call too. For tactile learners, many times these calls are all completely different calls, and their vocabulary is not 68 families. It is multiplied by every position available for it. So their vocabulary is huge, and they all start with the same words. An auditory learner won't understand what the heck they're talking about when they say, well, that recycle was different from this recycle. It's the same one to them. But for these people, it's completely different action. So realize you're talking about people that learn things radically differently, and the only way to effectively approach them is give them a chance to succeed, which is what Jerry's talking about.
Yeah, success is the only benchmark you have. And what Mike was talking about, a man on the end of a wave facing out, it's a totally different feel for him if he's the man on the wave facing in. Also, turn that around and do a swing through. Put a girl on the end of the wave facing out and call a swing through. A very, very different view to swing through. And be aware that it is different. For them, it's a new call. It's a totally new call.
The only identifying term that we utilize in square dancing that is not a learned term in the majority are the terms boys and girls. Every other term in square dancing is a learned term. Centers, ends, leads, trailers, bells, bows, whatever identification process we use, those all have to be learned terms, whereas ultimately for normal floors, boys and girls can be figured out very quickly. And they don't have to learn that as another term. So the advantage of the standard position introduction and using terms like boys and girls is that they don't have to be translated unlike every other one of those terms.
Exactly. So I kind of preach the standard setups to initiate my teaching. I don't want people frustrated. Now, understand also, teaching means repetition. Jerry Higgs said this morning it takes about 120 repetitions. I've heard that it takes at least 100 repetitions for anybody to actually learn anything. Doesn't matter whether it's square dancing or what it is. Understand that even though we as callers might be bored, they aren't. They just learned this call. They're just trying to figure out, you say Alaman left. They're not even really sure who the corner is. They're not even sure if they like her. And then when you say Alaman left, come back to the partner, and by the time they get back there, they've forgotten not only where she was, but who she was. So understand that it takes a lot of empathy. It takes a lot of repetition. There's nothing wrong with that. Never leave new dancers out dancing for long sequences. The thing that reinforces their interest in the activity, that reinforces their enthusiasm, is that you called a little bit and found that corner. That is instant gratification to a new dancer. Bang, Alaman left. Hey, we did it. And you get them back home. If you leave them dancing for a long period of time, this square breaks down. This square breaks down. That square breaks down. And you maybe have the 1 or 2 squares up front that made it. They're gratified. Boy, we're really good. But all of these people were standing, and they are not. This isn't why they came. They didn't come to hear you call. They came to dance. So understand that if you run short sequences and get that success ratio started at a high rate right off the bat, you lose a barrier of resistance to the activity instantly because, hey, I can do this. When they believe they can do this, they can. They really can. And not only that, they're more willing to absorb more information. If you drop them the squares as you start early in the program, it's a very frustrating thing for people. Very frustrating. So keep that in mind. Also, I think you need to watch, when you're teaching especially, that you're very careful with hand usage, that every call flows to another, that there's a comfort zone, that they don't have to use 2 right hands necessarily and then 2 left hands. I think you want to make it a very comfortable, flowing type thing, to make it satisfying, to make it feel like dancing, to make it feel like success. So those are the things that I look at when I'm teaching, and I think all of us need to be aware of that. Mike? Okay, all right. I've got some teaching examples. That's what you came to see. And I'm just going to borrow Lori, if I may, and Skip, if they would do that, please. And I'll just have you face each other. First thing, you watched this morning, and I'm going to use some more people here in a short time. You watched this morning. Jerry Helt had some people do a do-sa-do. He used its right shoulder to right shoulder, slide back to back, left shoulder, slide back to place. I tell people that here we are. We have 2 couples or 2 people facing each other. Lori is looking, for instance, at the clock on the wall. You ever have people turn around on a do-sa-do? When I go out on the floor, I actually go out myself. I would take Skip's place. But I would line the lady up to face the clock on the wall. I said, Lori is not going to take her eyes off that clock. I'm looking at the stage back here. I will not take my eyes off the stage. Now, I want you to pass right shoulders, keeping looking at that wall, slide back to back, left shoulder to left shoulder, back to face. If you give them a spot, a point to look at on the wall, they will never turn around. And for the benefit of the tape, Mike Jacobs is holding his watch against the wall. Very clever. Notice that you eliminated turning around instantly by fixing their eyes on something. And you never have to tell them, hey, don't turn around. They can't, because you've told them to watch that wall. Again, do a do-sa-do. Right shoulder, back to back, left shoulder, and back to place. They never took their eyes off the wall, and they will not turn around for you. Just a little tip.
It's any physical thing you can get them to relate to. And it's not appealing to the visual, it's appealing to the tactile. Because it's giving them an environment, a context into which to place their learning, as opposed to visual. For the visual learner on the do-sa-do, it is the environment here that is the visual action. And it's telling them, I'm coming back to the same spot on the floor, make the X there or whatever, and come back to this place. That's the visual aspect. What Jerry was really appealing to with the clock on the wall was for the tactile learner, because it's the overall environment of what they're learning, of how they're doing. The description of the back-to-back and so forth was the auditory learner and running through that. And he was giving it almost a chant aspect in order to give it a rhythm for them to learn by. It's appealing to all three primary learning styles and how that can affect somebody individually in their combination and so forth. But when you start giving things out, I don't understand why somebody has to look at the wall to do a do-si-do. It's plainly evident how to do it. However, it helps the person you don't understand to understand.
Exactly. And that's what you want. You want instant success, because if there isn't success, there's frustration. If there's frustration, there's reluctance to return. And you don't want that. You want these people to be so energetic, they can't wait to come next week. That's what you're looking for. I'd like to have two couples. Skip, I'm going to borrow you two, and sure. Okay, well, another lady, if I could. Well, Ed, would you and your wife just be part of this for a second? I want to use you guys quite a little. Okay, I'm going to just have you make a line facing the audience, if you would, please. This morning,
you should see it from this side.
I have all of us have people that we really admire. One of my people that I admire so much is Jerry Haig, because he's helped me so much during the years, and I used to travel through and call in his park down in Texas. When the evening was through, I got to spend hours talking with him about teaching. And he was always asking me, he said, Jerry, what calls give you a problem? I said, man, wheel and deal from lines facing out just tears me up. I can't get the couple on the right to go first. And he said, well, try this. And I'll just ask you guys, we've been working trades, okay? In this case, I would teach a couples trade, and let's just do it. I'm not going to go through the procedure, but as couples trade places, girls pass right shoulders. There you go. Okay, again, as couples trade places. Notice that it's a right shoulder pass, and you've gone through this whole procedure of teaching it, and I will work this a whole lesson. Never go to wheel and deal one time. Next week, come back and I review. Couples trade. Do that. Couples trade. And they're doing fine. I said, okay, guys, we're going to learn wheel and deal from lines. And the definition of the call says that you wheel to the center of the line 180 degrees, couple on the right end first. Ain't nobody going to do that. First of all, they don't know what 180 degrees is. Secondly, they don't care. Thirdly, they can't find the center of the line because we haven't talked ends and centers enough. But I said, to do this call, to execute this call, let's do a half of a couple's trade till the girl's shoulders line up. Everybody bend to face in. End of teach. Now, that's not the definition, but it feels like a wheel and deal. There is no question as to who's on the right end of the line. Absolutely no question in anybody's mind. They bent the line to face in, and end of call. There's no question as to which way they go. Okay, Skip, veer right, the other couple veer left.
For too long, dancers have come up to us with alternative explanations of what the definition was. And we have almost uniformly jumped down their throat from the purest aspect of, well, that ain't the definition, and therefore we come back with the rote definition again. What they're really telling us is the definition within their learning style, their view of it, and they're saying the same thing back to us in their language.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. And too often we have taken the purest approach of saving our art form here and not realizing they really are talking to us in the way we want to be talked to. It's just they've got a different language procedure coming across, and we need to understand and accept that, even though we feel, geez, where is that coming from? It is their understanding of what we have taught to them.
How many times when you've taught wheel and deal have you had the couples wheel away from the center? How many? Just hold your hand up. There's nothing to be ashamed of in that. There aren't enough hands, that's right. And Haig taught me this, and I fooled with it, and the idea is that you have to work the couple's trades for a while, even 2 weeks. What's the hurry? There's not a hurry. But when you teach wheel and deal, you don't want that wall. My dad was going to quit square dancing over wheel and deal. This is 1965. He will die if he knows I put this on his tape. My mom said, if you're going to sleep with me, you're going to learn wheel and deal. That's right. He could not learn wheel and deal on a bet. One night he's dancing along and he just danced it. And he said, that's not hard. Mom said, I've been telling you that for 2 weeks.
We have set dancers up for failure because we taught them wheel around. And for the auditory dancer, he's learned the word wheel, and now the wheel doesn't mean anything for him to be successful here. We've set up his confusion. I mean, the word cross in square dancing has gone across all the different programs to mean a variety of things where it doesn't mean anything anymore, and it's a null and void for the dancers. They haven't learned squat when they've learned to call with cross in it, because next week the cross means something else. Our consistency isn't there, but no language is perfect because it comes from living people. Therefore, we have to deal with the reality of how to get people successful in the environment and be able to communicate.
Okay, now, we're doing this wheel and deal. Let's do it again. Let's do a couple's half a trade, bend to face in. Okay, the next guy is going to tell me, all right, what do you do when you put two boys together, two girls together? Put the centers in, if you would, please. Couple's trade. Who pass right shoulders? If we want to teach a wheel and deal from here, I'm not going to worry about right shoulders. I'm going to say, we're going to do a wheel and deal, guys. Now remember what we did before. Let's do a half of a couple's trade. Bend the line to face in. End of teach. Doesn't matter who's where. The couple's trade always has the right shoulder pass. And why give them a definition that they simply don't understand or is too difficult to understand when we can make it easy for them? And that's simple.
Plus, we have made too big a deal over positioning. What happens is that we present, hey, now here, folks, here's a huge problem to come up and try to solve. And guess what? They consider it a huge problem because we've told it to them that way.
That's right.
I have found more often in the course of when I learned to square dance and work through things, as Stu knows, Stu Chocolate tonight will receive his 50th anniversary of calling. He's the man that taught me to square dance. When he taught me to dance, it was mostly with me being on one side and the other side, but when I finally got to a spot where I had to interpret the rule differently, it was never made such a big production of. It was like, oh, I'm over here. Well, let's see, that's where the other person was, and I can kind of let people use their ability to learn to solve the problem. Give them a chance to solve it. Don't try to solve it for them. Many times you will find out how successful learners they are without you.
And again, you want to go through the definition of the wheel and deal, but people do not understand 180 degrees. Again, let's do a wheel and deal. Let's do a couple's hinge or a couple's half a trade, bend the line to face in. I haven't done anything that disrupts the definition in effect, but I have alleviated a whole lot of problems for the dancers, and they never question where the center of the line is because they know they have to do that half a trade first. That's one of the things.
To succeed also here, you don't have to use 180 degrees, although to an element of your floor, they understand that term. Physicality, it's the wall behind you and that they were looking for and trying to find. Use the fact that we dance in square halls, and this is square dancing, as an element in your favor. People that can't cast three-quarters can count walls. Telling them it's the wall behind tells them where they're ending up facing. Let them use their physical environment for the tactile learner. It's the only way they can function and learn.
Okay, I'm going to have you pair off as couples facing, if you would, please. Just pick up the girl. Okay, they're couples facing. Another thing you want to think about, and I talked about this, and the thing that I want to talk to you about is to understand that when you execute a call, for new dancers especially, you want to be thinking about what's the easiest way I can get them out of that call. I don't want to leave people in a manner they can't do. For instance, I'm not going to walk you through this, just do a turn through. These guys will do it, I'm sure. But what happens here, we're half sashayed, aren't we? With a brand new dancer, what can you call? That's it. you turn back, because anything else they really can't execute. I'm not in favor of that. I don't think that's necessary, because then they get the idea they have to do a U-turn back after every turn through. Let's do this. Do a U-turn back and a right and a left through. Roll away a half sachet. This is called setting your dancer up for success. Now, if I'm going to teach turn through, I'm going to teach it from here. I don't teach you step forward, turn the opposite 180 degrees by the right forearm, and pull by. People don't understand 180 degrees. I'll tell people, if we do a turn through, you're going to wind up on the spot you're now standing. You will wind up facing the wall that is now behind you. Let's step forward, take a right forearm with the person in front. Trade with them. They understand trade. Drop hands, step through. End of teach. Now I've got them facing out, lady on the right side. Courtesy turn to girl. They're comfortable instantly. Had nothing to do with anything except that I didn't allow them to break down. I didn't give them a chance to make a mistake. If you want to watch a guy that's a master at that, watch Marshall Flippo.
Jerry is talking about comfort, and in reality he's talking about finding the position that creates the most dancer success. What is innately hard about this call? Is it the starting formation, the process of doing the call, or the ending formation? And I think Jerry correctly analyzed that it was the end, getting them to be in the right place. Ultimately, we know from all the dancing that people have done is that you can get people to start turning other people rather rapidly. To get them to end an exact spot is another matter. By him setting up the most recognizable spot as the ending formation, he analyzed correctly that this was what was wrong with this call, was what the end was. So he set them up so they would fall into the most natural spot. He analyzed that the ending of the call was the hardest aspect, not the process of where it started from, recognizing the starting formation, or recognizing how to dance the call. It was the ending to get a clear shot at. That was the analysis. He set it up for their best success at succeeding through it.
Exactly. And that's what I think you need to watch. Touch a quarter, if you would, please. Another call that gives people trouble, it's called a scoot back. And scoot back essentially amounts to this, that the two people holding right hands at this time, when we finish the call scoot back, will actually trade. And I will just do that as couples, boys with a girl in your right hand, trade places. When we finish the call scoot back, this is where you're going to be. You'll have the same girl by the same right hand. Same girl, same right hand. Okay, again, trade with the gal.
For the visual dancer, he told them the spot. For the tactile dancer, he told the hand context. I'm touching the same hand with the same person. So for a tactile person, you had an environment. For the visual, you had a place.
Okay. Now, if I'm going to teach the call again, I will tell them you have a person in your right hand. One person is facing out. In this case, it's the lady. The other person is facing in this case, the boy. If we do a scoot back, the out facer, in this case the lady, I want you to fold behind the boy to take his position. Do that, girls. Fold behind the boy. You have replaced that boy's position. Boys, as an in-facing person in the call scoot back, you're going to extend, join a right forearm, trade, and extend back to the same right hand. That's the way I work it. This is a call that I use all position instantly. I'll say, all right, now we have the ladies facing in, boys facing out. If we do a scoot back, you will wind up with the same person in the same right hand. Boys, you're now facing out. Boys, your part of the call is to fold behind the lady, to take her position. Do that, boys. Girls, step forward, join a right forearm, trade, and extend back to the same right hand. You scoot forward, you come back. That's the way I would teach that call. Mike?
It's interesting. There's a couple things. First off, how many people have noticed confusion on dancers' part learning these calls when they get walk and dodge introduced to them? That walk and dodge and scoot back become interchangeable. You know why? And it's not the scoot back and the walk and dodge. It's what we do with the second call. Because more often than not, everybody scoot back here. Go ahead. and we follow with Boys Run. And did you notice what this girl did when she correctly danced it? Go ahead, finish it. Yeah. She flipped over on the scoot back, and then she dodged over on the run. Now, everybody touch a quarter. Walk and dodge, partner trade. What is happening when the scoot back and the walk dodge get confused with each other, it's actually the group of two calls that we have done commonly so much. The touch and quarter Boys Run is being confused for the walk and dodge partner trade unit. The girl, in essence, is feeling her way through the same series of things. So, of course, what happens is, everybody touch a quarter. Just a second. So, scoot back and Boys Run. The girls actually are doing what they do on the walk and dodge and partner trade. And that's what happens on the other way around. Both issues get confused because we have basically taught them a module that gets constantly exposed to them, and there's no reason for them to learn one call. They learn two calls together. We might as well call that banana. Is scoot back, Boys Run. We can call that grapefruit for the walk and dodge partner trade because they are so often in context with each other that for the dancers, and particularly tactile dancers, they have felt the same pattern. And they're totally interchangeable. And as far as where they end, they all end up in the same spot, so who cares? That's what's going through their learning style mind, and what we don't understand is we're trying to teach them. It's obviously the different calls to us, but we're not really producing a different reaction on the floor.
The other thing that you do, and Mike brings up a good point, the other thing that you do is how close are scoot back and walk and dodge on the teaching order? Too close. You don't teach them the same time. And secondly, this is a personal preference of mine, I don't teach walk and dodge followed by a partner trade. I do this, touch a quarter if you would please. And I'm going to tell you now, the boys are going to walk across to replace the girl in front of them. Ladies, you are going to slide or dodge. And my teach is simply this, and for the benefit of the tape, I have the dancers look at me, and if I'm going to walk, I do this. I take one step forward. If I'm going to dodge, I slide to the right. That's simple. That's end of walk and dodge. Now, girls, remember that you're an outfacer. Let's do a walk and dodge. Boy walk, girl dodge. You will always have some ladies turn around. And I say, now girls, if you turn around on a walk and dodge, you'll be sick in the morning. And at our age, sometimes that wouldn't be a good thing. They'll get it after a while. So I've done a walk.
You can buy a tape outside, though. It'll be real funny later on.
Right. So I've got a walk and dodge. I have people facing out. Everybody wants to do a partner trade. Don't do that. So that you reinforce the fact that that dancer that did the dodge stays facing out. Boys, fold in front of her front. Star through. Boys touch. Boys trade. Bend the line. Everybody touch a quarter. Walk and dodge. Boy walk, girl dodge. Boy fold in front of her front. Star through. Boy touch. Boy trade. Bend the line. There's no doubt in their mind they have to stay facing out because you folded the boy in front to do another call. When they understand how walk and dodge works, then it's fine to go with the partner trade. But work some choreography so that you know you can do this. So that you know there's no doubt in their mind how this call works, and that the lady does in fact, if she's the dodger, does in fact stay facing out. Same thing for the boys. No reason you couldn't have the girls fold in front of the boy and star through.
Let's sashay this couple, okay? Touch quarter. Scoot back. Walk and dodge. Well, geez, they went through this really weird combination where some were sashayed, some weren't. They must be super dancers. They're not. The boxes four has been so close together that it's easy to see. The reason why the standard ways we use are not great success points for scoot back and walk and dodge is not because we have mixed sexes coming in or mixed sexes. It's because the waves are so far apart. Now, do we yell at the dancers trying to get them close together? That won't happen. Our choreography doesn't lend itself to that. And no matter how much you berate the dancers for keeping waves far apart, it's still going to exist that way. So recognize that that's what the problem is, and not because you have a boy and a girl doing the turn through or a boy and a girl doing the walk while the others are dodging. It's because of where things are physically located. Physical location is as much of a problem area as the combination of what dancers is working with each other.
A little bit ago I talked about efficiency. Let's just, Ed and Corrine, if you would turn around, and Skip, if you would partner trade. I talked about efficiency of teaching. How many times have you called a girls' run and nobody did? Or they couldn't find it? I like to teach all the runs at one time, and I get them in lines of 4. Admittedly, we don't have lines of 4, but imagine 2 other couples. Now, you want instant success. You don't want failure. Do a right and a left through. Roll away a half sachet. I'm looking for the ending that I want. I want them normal. Pass through. Okay, then I would go through my definition of what a run is. Girls, you're on the right side. You're going to run to the right around the boy. The boy will slide over to replace her. You only have 2 spots that you're standing in. If the girl runs around the boy, then he has to counter dance or slide over to replace her. Ladies, when you finish, you will be facing the wall behind you. Boys, you will be facing the wall you're now looking at. Girls, run around the boy. Go through the same procedure. You've got boys facing out, girls facing in. Girls, if you're the one that's being run around, then you have to adjust or counter dance into that boy's position. Boys, you will run to the right around the lady to face the wall behind you. Boys, run. I've taught everybody at the dance to run. All 8 people in every square in one set. And there's no doubt about what they do. Now, you're going to have to repeat that. But what do I have now? I have normal couples. They're comfortable, and they can't fail. Do a right and left through again. Roll away a half sachet. Pass through. Girls run. Boys run. There's no doubt as to what they do. And why will they run from that direction? Because they're back to back. There's nobody in front of them to obscure their view, to confuse them with whom they're even running around. You've taken away every chance for failure that they have, and you've taught all 8 people at one time.
Now, what's so wonderful about right-hand setups or where these people are standing? I mean, innately, we pass left shoulders when we drive cars. We're taught as gentlemen that we sit on the outside of a woman when we're walking down the sidewalk, regardless of what side of the street we're walking on. So this has no magic in and of itself as a cross-discipline from some other mystical source. It's where we started dancing. And since that's how we introduced it, it's returning to the familiar for them. And so if on day 1 you started your square dance groups by starting on the other side, then that would be the familiar starting point. Have you ever noticed that if you have a caller in your area that had a particular axe to grind on a particular call, that they can do this one position that nobody else in God's creation can ever do or perform? However, they cannot normally handle the call. That's because they were introduced that awkward, strange position as the standard formation of the call and have been drilled effectively under it and have heard it enough to learn it. It is a process of the rote memorization process of square dancing, the instinctive learning, all the other things has nothing to do with the position or the teaching or anything else. And so the most familiar is where people will return to naturally. Since this is our starting formation, Jerry keeps going back to it to give them the most familiar place to go to. It gives them the most success.
A comfort zone.
Exactly.
Pass the ocean, another call that's hard for people to teach. Swing through. Boy, run. Okay. And again, this is, I would rather talk about this than eat. I love to teach. I look forward to every day. When I get to Mesa, Arizona, I get to teach. Every morning, every afternoon, I can't wait. I love this. But it didn't used to, because it wasn't good enough. It takes some time. And go watch somebody that's good. Go listen to somebody that knows what he's doing. Don't be afraid to say, well, I know how to do that. Maybe you don't. we did a caller school. And one of the things that one of the guys said, he said, boy, I have a tough time teaching tag the line. Another guy says, I got a pretty good way to do that. He said, when you tag the line, he said, everybody face the center of your line of 4 and do that if you would, please. Passing right shoulders, take 4 steps. Go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a completed double pass through. And I thought, why didn't I think of that? Girls, do a U-turn back. Touch a quarter. Girls trade. Swing through. Boy run. Again, we're all set up, and we're going to do a tag the line. We're going to face the center of the line, and you're going to wind up just like you did a double pass through. But let's do it. Let's face the center of the line, taking 4 steps, pass right shoulders. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing really magical about that. But watch what happens when we want to teach half tag. Girls turn around, touch a quarter. Girls trade, swing through. Boys run. I didn't have any trouble teaching.
Stop a second.
Line.
Whoa, I don't want to interrupt. Don't you do that. That's not where you were. Notice that, come back forward where you were. Notice that these ladies really had to adjust back in order to contact here, which, as good little square dancers that touch hands, they do. However, tag the line can take the natural advantage of where their bodies are positioned by passing right shoulders. That's truly why it's awkward out of other setups, because they don't have the natural advantage of being in the correct position to dance. As they start to quarter, they're already slightly offset. So there's a natural, easy dance tendency to do it correctly. They're set up for success. So boys run tag the line is a good way of introducing the tag the line action, because they're set up to pass the correct shoulder and there's no awkwardness involved. These ladies actually set themselves up for a little more awkwardness because they were trying to be positional and good little dancers. However, when you notice as they moved, they were naturally offset. If Jerry was calling a regular sequence to music where it would have been boys run tag the line, they would have never done that, and they would have been naturally offset to naturally dance into the next part of the call.
Right, and I teach tag the line from this two-face line. I don't teach it from standard lines, from lines facing the same direction, till after they have the idea down.
Hands anymore.
Now, the call I had trouble with was teaching half tag. I'd say, well, you face the center of the line and move forward till the lead girl can touch the lead boy. What a stupid thing to say. There ain't nobody going to do that. But he said, why don't you do this? Face the center of your line. Everybody take 2 steps. 1, 2. Boom. End of call. And I thought, hello, Earth to Jerry, where have I been? 2 steps. He taught them tag the line as 4 steps. What would be the obvious thing for a half tag? Or, for instance, 3/4 tag the line. Take another step. End of call. Take 3 steps. Boom. And it's in a language people can understand. That's the thing. We make square dancing too hard. We make it way too hard. Not that you don't want the definition, but think about the definition. How can we put it in their terms? How can we make it, explain it in English to a new dancer? And remember, you're talking to people who are not knowledgeable about the square dance activity, about the square dance terms.
Ultimately, I don't want to know why the flashlight works. I just want to know how to replace the batteries.
That's right. Okay, boys extend to a girl, do a partner trade. Okay, another call that gives lots of problems is Dixie style to a wave. Pass the ocean. Swing through. I'm not getting what I want. Boy run. Okay, do a half tag. That'll get me where I want. I want to get them facing so you can see what I want. Scoot back. Boys fold behind the girl. Hardest call, I think, to teach is Dixie style to a wave. Not because it's a hard call or a difficult call, but because as new dancers, the first time they ever get to look at a left-hand wave is right now. Everything's been right-handed except for star through and Alaman left up till now. Understand that. You say left hand and they go, whoa, wait a minute. We haven't done that. So you make that easy. And I like to teach Dixie style to a wave from here. And I will work in the tip of 4, say dive through, square through 3, left touch a quarter, Boy, run left. Dial a man left. I'll get the left touch a quarter going so they understand what left touch a quarter is. If I want to teach Dixie style to a wave, I said, now when we finish this call, you're going to wind up in something that is foreign to us, something that's called a left-hand ocean wave. We're going to have the boys in the center, girls on the end. Girls, you're going to have the boy that you're looking at by the left hand. Girls, shake right hand.
Just before you start your teach, notice his success in his setup. His setup has them actually finding the only place that these two people can reach each other is with the right hand. The left hand is an awkward feeling option and therefore not the easiest one to fall into. So his automatic startup, and there's also no choice about who's going over there. It is the people that are in the lead. So his starting formation is going to lead to some success right away.
Also notice that the definition of Dixie style says it actually starts from a double track. I'll show you that in a second. But girls, shake right hands. Pull by. Left touch a quarter with a boy. End of call. End of teach. And what did it take? 5 seconds? And there's no doubt as to what they're doing. Now, the problem that callers have getting out of this, and that's the problem, is getting out of it. What do I do? All right, I got a left-hand wave. All I can do is a left swing through. Wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. You don't want them left-handed. They're here this way. That's enough left hand right now for the new dancer. So you do this. Boys, bend over, look to the right. See the girl on your far right? And we've worked some cross runs, for instance. Boys, cross run. Ladies, slide together. Ladies, trade. They are back to comfort. Instant comfort. And all they did was do the Dixie style wave. They never did anything with it. You just showed them that formation.
Now, is Jerry trying to force mix down their throat? No, which is the cross run in the center's trade when it gives a label. It's because it's a natural dance reaction, and it also has the advantage of tightening the setup by forcing the two girls to grab hands on the trade.
Watch how it dances. Do a single hinge. Scoot back. Boy, fold behind the girl. Now, you've gone through the teach. Ladies lead. Dixie style to a wave. Boys, cross run. Ladies slide together. Ladies trade. They can't miss. They cannot miss. And you've eliminated all the problems. Now, you still have to teach them the calls, say from facing couples. Swing through. Boy, run.
Can you set your setup one more time, though, that
sure.
You're using? Just one more thing.
Do a half tag. Scoot back. Boy, fold behind the girl.
I would have gone to help the fellows a little bit here to make it a more natural quarter turn action. For the girls, it's a quarter turn action. For the fellows, it's almost a three-quarter turn because they have to adjust their bodies over. So that in part of the process, I would say, fellas, you're receiving a girl, so slide over to your right a little bit as she pulls by with the right. That gives both of them a right action so that the option for both dancers next is left. So girls pull by, boys dodge over, do the left touch quarter. And it's a little less turning.
Boys cross run. Girls slide together, girls trade. Swing through. Boy run. Bend the line. And I'll tell them, now we've been doing Dixie style, but you're not normally going to see it from that type of formation. Normally we'll see it from here. Everybody do a right and left through. The call is still the same. We're going to wind up in this left-hand wave. But when you hear Dixie style called from this wave, boys, you're in the left-hand position. Boys, you're going to have to slide to the right behind the ladies. So boys, slide to the right behind the girls. Ladies lead, Dixie style to a wave. End of call. And I cue it that way. Boys, cross run. Ladies trade. Swing through. Boy run. Bend the line. This is very fast to what I would do at a class. Do a right and left through. Boys, slide behind the lady. Ladies lead Dixie style. I did all of that, never broke their flow 1 second, did I? You have to talk to them. Get them the feel. Give them the idea that the boys indeed do have to slide behind the girls, that they have to move, that there's counter dancing, that it is a dance.
And then it makes more sense of the other dodging action from the other formation. There's a consistency that just because you have a different dancing formation approaching the call, it still has the same texture and feel. It sounds the same. It doesn't have a different rule. And it ends up visually looking the same.
Okay. And do we have time for one more, Mike? Okay. Can I have two more couples real quickly? And we'll leave you guys up. And then we're going to give you a big break because you've been great. Okay. Head couples, if you would, just step forward, face your corner. Touch a quarter. Okay. Center straight. Swing through. You ever have trouble teaching cast off 3/4? I normally don't teach it from a centers in, cast off 3/4 type formation. I start from ocean waves because I want them to understand what we have, and I will explain this. We're going to learn a call called cast off 3/4. Notice that we're in an ocean wave, and we are at the head position where the square is. The ocean waves are standing where the head positions are. When we finish with our cast off 3/4, we will have an ocean wave. Girls will be in the center, boys on the ends, but we're going to be at the side position. I tell them where they're going to wind up. Now, girls, you've got a boy by the right hand. With this boy, if we cast 3/4, you're going to take 5 steps. So let's do that. Cast right, 3/4, 5 steps till the girls touch. They have a spot to come to. There's no question in their mind what 3/4 is. They're not counting walls. They don't worry about it. They know that if they were at the head position, they wind up at the side position. Girls trade. Do a single hinge, and we're right back where we wanted. Center straight. And you want flow with this. Swing through. I want the girls in the center always cast 3/4 till those girls touch. Girls trade. Do a single hinge. Centers trade. Swing through. They're getting the idea. Now, I'll say, now you're going to cast 5 steps, and somebody's going to come up and say, well, it should be 6 steps. And I said, yeah, it should, but it takes 1 step to think about it.
Before you cast off right here, look at how close these waves are, which my point about scoop back and walk dodge before. Go ahead and do the cast off.
Cast 3/4. Cast off 3/4.
And notice how wide this space is. It's exactly, this is much harder to then scoop back and walk and dodge from. Not because there's a boy and a girl functioning and working. It's because it's so far apart to be able to recognize the setup. I couldn't fit between them, but I can fit in here really well. Well, I don't know. I doubt that.
Who said that? Girls trade. Do a single hinge. Okay. Now, admittedly, there is, let's do this, swing through. Centers trade. And you can turn right around and put the boys in the middle. All you got to have is the boys facing out to put them in the middle. Cast right 3/4 till the boys touch. Boys trade. You want to get out of it? Boys run. Bend the line.
One of the advantages of Jerry's teach is that remember I talked about foreign terms, and sides and heads are foreign terms that have to be learned. However, use it as an identifier here relates to where they originally are anyway. It's not really, it's an easily identified term. So it gets the square to start thinking about across the heads, across the sides, and it can become another easy rallying point for the square and a way to quickly communicate with somebody that's in trouble instead of having to go and use their name and find out where they are in the hall and so forth. We've got ways of helping the square out without having a real problem.
Exactly. And I want you to give the dancers all a big hand, especially the two that have been up all this time. Thank you very much. These are just some of the teaching things, and they indeed are teaching techniques to me. They are ways to make your teaching easier. These are a few that I have. Mike has some. Everybody has some. I have some calls that I still don't think I've got down well enough. But experiment. Find what works well. And don't be afraid to go ask somebody, because they might have something. That guy that taught me the half tag, hey, I'm at the caller school and I'm running it. And this guy taught half tag, and I thought, hello. Yeah.
And one of the things here about it is the theory I gave you at the very beginning segues really well into what Jerry's accomplished. Jerry's doing things the right way, and there's a scientific reason that says why it's the right way. So there is a science to the art of teaching square dancing. It's not just simply an art form. And from that we can deduce other methods that will become successful and not just accidentally luck into them. We can research to the point where we can discover the right way to present to the right person, and not just simply accidentally discover it and accept and absorb the casualties in the interim time. We can't afford casualties any longer, folks. We got to conserve what dancers we have.
The other thing that it does, if you can find ways to teach, find ways to make calls easy, and I'm not saying I'm the best teacher in the world. I think I need a ways to go. I think all of us do. But if you can find ways to make calls easy for people, you eliminate frustration and you excite them about the activity. I can do this. I can succeed. If they succeed, I guarantee you they will come back in the door. If they don't, they will do what a lot of dancers have done. They have walked out the door. Our customers told us that we weren't doing our job. And the fact that we have so many people in here is exciting to me, because a lot of times the teaching sessions aren't something that people want to see, and I appreciate you coming. I sincerely hope you've enjoyed this. We have time for questions, do we not, Mike? Okay, Mike will run around with a microphone.
You said it takes 100 times to learn anything. Does this mean we have to sit through this session 99 more times?
Well, since you were at the mini lab, 98 for you.
There's a gentleman there with a question.
Yeah, could you review how to do a recycle?
Sure. May I have my two couples out? Bless your hearts.
How much you'll enjoy dinner.
Yes. All right. I usually actually become one of the people in the square. Now, I don't have to do that here, but let's just pass the ocean, if you would, please. And I go through a recycle to say that, boys, you have a girl by the right hand at this time. When we finish our recycle, she will be your partner. She will be facing the wall she is now facing. Boys, you're going to face the wall behind you. You're going to wind up facing the couple on the other end of your wave. Girls, don't move. Boys, your action will feel like this. Boys, cross-fold in front of the far girl. That's the way the action is going to feel for you. Girls, put your right hand out. Point right. Girls, run to the right and fold to face back in. That's how the action goes for you. It's a run and a fold. There's no doubt as to what they do. Step to a wave. Again, if we do a recycle, boys, cross-fold. Girls, run and fold. Notice there is no hand usage. There is no doubt as to what anybody does. That's how I would teach a recycle.
I'm glad you picked this call, because I want to address the Advanced and Challenge Committee from which I come from. Recycle is one of these bugaboo calls and everything else that has been one of these issues. I want to address the Advanced and Challenge Committee. Get a life. These people effectively got to the spot, danced it, and I defy you to take a videotape of them, compare them to a purist wave that learned it in a particular wave, and find out which one is dancing what. If they understand how to get to the spot, I don't care what thought process they got to. Now, if later on that keeps them from learning some other aspect, then I have to find some way to overcome their problem. But let's get a life here. We realize that these people successfully learned how to do the call, and we need to accept their success and praise it and cherish it and not criticize it because it didn't cross the I and dot the T.
Okay, step to a wave again. After they get that idea down, I'll say, all right, boys, as you start your cross fold, I want you to gently push that lady's right hand as you go. Recycle. Girls, you run and fold. There's absolutely no doubt as to how they can execute the call, and thank you, guys.
One other thing real quick. This is one call that I would really like to get sashayed soon. Not because I really want the boys to learn it. I want the boys to experience it.
But you
swing
can
through,
from
please.
this way. You can from this method.
Yeah, swing through. The fellas need to confront the reality of what the lady is experiencing on the recycle, which is a complete 360, almost in spot, and we give her an extra spin as we go. Here's your chance to do unto others. Give it to them, girls. Recycle. And the fellas need to experience that to appreciate how they should dance with the opposite sex in the square, so that they can really feel what it is that they're experiencing too, the difficulty they may be having in the call because of that action, and learn what the other side feels, so that they can actually dance and be gentle with each other. There's not enough gentleness in our current form of square dancing.
Absolutely. I would go through another teach if I did this, step to a wave just this way. If we're going to teach it this way, I would say, girls, you're part of this call as the end dancer. Girls cross fold. Boys run and fold. There's no doubt. Now, I actually wouldn't teach it this way. Yes, let's do this. Touch quarter. Boy run. Do a right and left through. Ladies lead Dixie style. Boy trade. Now, here's the way I would teach a recycle from this way. It's actually left-handed, but it's easier. No, it's not. And there's a reason for this. Girls cross-fold, it's to the left. Boys run left and fold. How are they now? And that's what I'm looking for.
And that's his analysis, is the ending formation because of that call. But the only problem in the process is that that's an unfamiliar run left, and the fold too is to the left. So it is harder.
It is harder, but if you do the cross fold, the run and fold, they can't miss. It's success. And that's what you're going for. At least that's what I look for.
At the challenge level, there's an aspect of recycle called two-thirds recycle.
Pardon?
Folks, two-thirds of the people on the floor learn that as a call. So addressing advanced and challenged dancers, most of those people do not learn conceptually, despite what you think of them. They learn call names and positions to go to. It's a different call. Learn to live with it that way.
Ed just asked me if I would teach, how I would teach Follow Your Neighbor. Maybe it's different than some other people would teach. A Follow Your Neighbor is really a cast three-quarters for everybody. If I teach Follow Your Neighbor, I'll say this: everybody extend, boys touch. Girls do not do a thing. Back up. Let's back up, do this again. You got to tell them where they're going to wind up. Girls, you have a hold of your neighbor. Look at him. Think about it. Girls, look at your left hand. When you finish, you're going to have this neighbor by the left hand. Everybody extend. Girls don't do a thing. Boys, cast three-quarters, 5 steps. Boys, freeze. Girls, put your right hand out as if there's an imaginary boy in that right hand. With this imaginary boy, cast right three-quarters, join a left hand with your neighbor. End of call.
Here's a good scenario where you can have that lonesome girl functioning with the phantom count walls. Also, another trick to get through three-quarter turns is divide it into something smaller. Make it a half and a quarter, or a quarter and a half. Half is the wall behind. Then it's easy to get that little quarter more to get the call finished.
Get the other two couples up real quickly. Another way to teach Follow Your Neighbor. I hope we're not boring you. This is... I love this. Heads past the ocean. Swing through. How did I just teach Follow Your Neighbor? I said you extend and cast three-quarters. Everybody extend. Cast right three-quarters. That's Follow Your Neighbor. Centers trade. Boys run. And you're out of it. I use it in mainstream also.
Up to the middle and back.
Past
really,
the ocean.
That's not funny. That is a way that he repaired himself without me having to point to him directly or embarrass him. It was a gentle way of doing it, and he corrected the problem. I didn't correct it for him.
Would you believe I did it on purpose for a demonstration?
It was planned ahead of time, yes. Thank you, that was very good.
Past the ocean, swing through, boy run, Ferris wheel, center 4, star through, center 4, past the ocean, swing through. Now, the reason that I do it this way, set it up this way, is I want boys casting with boys because I can talk to people when I explain Follow Your Neighbor. The definition for Follow Your Neighbor says extend. When you do that, instantly you've got right hands and cast three-quarters. Boys are casting with boys, girls with girls. Now, the idea is that you don't want to leave them here. This makes new dancers or new plus dancers very uncomfortable. Centers trade. boys run. And we are normal. And you've really given them a different feel for follow your neighbor. Clark.
Well, I think there were questions over here first. But
I'm sorry. You had the right people up here doing the right thing, so I just wanted to hit it if I could.
Yeah.
You did tag the line from two face lines. The girls always quartered right and went down the line. When I've seen it taught, and then you get to lines like this, pass through and tag the line, I haven't see a problem with a girl turning the wrong way. I was interested in hearing about that.
And recognize that, too, for 2/3 of the dancers on the floor, their learning style tells them that's a different call, even though it's got the same name.
Yeah, what Clark was talking about here is tag the line from here. I would never do it from facing lines, pass through, because then I eliminate one problem right away. Well, what are we doing with those folks in front of us? And tag the line from here, for all intents and purposes to the new dancer, is a new call. It is a completely new call. All the girls aren't in the center, are they? And they're not right shoulders, are they? So this takes some adjustment. So you have to tell them, where's the center of the line? Let's face